Hey, let's talk about the GFX 102. I have it here. I finally got it in my hands for a few days, but I did want to talk a little bit about my impressions, what I think about it, mainly in terms of looks. The image quality is impeccable. It is mind-blowing, especially using the new 55 f1.7 that I have right here. This is a great lens. And I also use the 110 for portrait photography. There's a new sensor. It still has 102 megapixels, so that is good. It is the CMOS 2HS, and it has a readout speed that's almost double the GFX 100S. I want to take a little second here in this video just to tell you one thing about the file size, because you might be wondering how big or how small the files are, because we are talking 102 megapixels in a medium format camera sensor. So the file is an average of 150 megabytes per RAW file and an average of 50 megabytes per JPEG. So if you shoot RAW and JPEG, expect getting around 200 megs for one shot. So that means 5 photos for 1 gig. And if you have a 128 gig SD card, I let you do the math. That's not a ton of photos. So just keep in mind that this camera, being what it is, being a beast, is going to take a lot of space on your memory cards, on your hard drives, on your computers, and so forth. The X Processor 5 now can shoot up to 8 FPS. The subject detection AI, which we've seen on many of the recently released Fuji cameras with the APS-C sensors such as the XH2, XH2S, XS20, and so forth, is now available here too. And this will allow you not only to track, obviously, human faces and eyes in the more accurate way, and let me tell you, it is very accurate, but you can also track things like animals, birds, cars, motorcycles, bicycles, airplanes, and trains. So there's a whole slew of things that you can track. I did a shoot the other day and I was tracking a little puppy and it worked great. He was behind someone else and there was just a little bit of the dog like showing behind the legs of the person, and I could still see the square, the rectangle around the dog. There's an updated autofocus prediction algorithm. What that's good for is mainly sports, high-speed sports, where you have to track a car, or if you have to track, for example, a horse in a competition, and you need to be quick with the autofocus. What it does is that the algorithm tracks or predicts where the subject is going to move as much as possible. And it allows you to be more precise and to always have the AF working in real time to track that subject. Let's now take a look at the EVF, shall we? If you're in boost mode, you can set the refresh rate up to 120 FPS, which will give you a very smooth refresh of the image. And if you're shooting something that's moving fast, it will be more pleasant and easier to understand what's going on. The other thing is that it now has a 9.44 million dots, which is quite impressive and a lot more than we used to see on other cameras from Fuji at any time in history. The base sensitivity of the ISO is 80. That is great news. It is very low. So when you're shooting with a lot of light, it will allow you to reduce that light and to gain a few stops. Photos can be shot in either 14 or 16-bit, and that is great for dynamic range. It will give you more flexibility between your highlights and your shadows and everything in between. It will allow you to be more creative on your files. The Pixel Shift Multi-Shot is a technology that basically takes 20 photos for you, stitches them together, and gives you a file that's up to 400 megapixels of resolution. Being that we're using a sensor that has a basic resolution of 102 megapixels, that makes sense. But do keep in mind that this is something you need to do on a tripod. You cannot move your camera because it will detect the movement and stop you from doing it. There's a new film simulation called Reala Ace for those that like to shoot either only JPEG or that like to use film simulations from Fuji. You can now do so with this camera, and it looks very nice. Let's take a look at the IBIS, in-body image stabilization. You now have up to 8 stops. That is quite impressive because what it allows you to do is to take photos handheld with a lower shutter speed and reduce the shakiness or any movement that you may do. It is also great for video because it gives you more stability and it's not as shaky when you go handheld. You can now shoot videos with this camera. It is a medium format camera, so think about it. that can give you really cool results. It has a little button right here that goes from movie to still, a bit like we used to see on the X-T4, and it allows you to shoot up to 30p in 8K, 60p in 4K, and 120p in full HD. 10-bit, 422, everything internal. You can record in f-log too, so flat profile. Let's now talk about CF Express, shall we? This guy right here is one of the cards that you can put on one of the slots. And on the other slot, you can put an SD card. That is the design they use for the XH2, for example, that I already said it in the past. I don't like that. The only reason I don't like this is because it's a hybrid. Right now, we are transitioning, I feel like, to CF Express, at least for cameras that need better read and write speed on the memory cards, and that is fine. But for example, my Sony camera that I'm using right now allows me to use CF Express Type A or SD cards. I can choose whichever I prefer. In this case, you have to use one of these and you have to use an SD card. So if you're someone that shoots with this camera, for example, weddings and so forth, or that you need to have a backup of what you're doing, you will have to back up on both CF and SD. So get prepared to buy a lot of CF cards in addition to your SD cards. There's a new leather pattern called Bishamon Tex. It's an interesting name, but it looks a little bit like, I don't know, diamond patterns, a little bit like this. And it feels very nice, very premium. Aesthetically speaking, it does look very, very good. The top plate was enhanced, this guy here. Now you can see a little bit better. The viewing angle was improved, so you can look from pretty much any angle and you will see your settings properly. I kind of like this this idea that they came up with on the GFX series of the little screen on top that shows you all the information the way they did with the two wheels and two dials that are just digital and they stay on when you turn off the camera. That's something I like a lot. Are you ready for the EVF extension? This guy here, this little thing, you see, open it, close it, tilt it to the sides. And what it does is that it allows you to look at the EVF from the top. That is really cool because, I don't know, if you want to shoot, for example, indoor, or you want to do a low angle shot, you can go down real low like this and then look from above and then see everything from above. And it does remind me a little bit of the good old cameras, the Rolleiflex and so forth that you used to shoot from above. And that looks, I think it's a really cool look. So that is optional. You buy it separately from the camera. They came out with another accessory. That's the battery grip. You can put this under your camera and it gives you 2 batteries slots instead of 1, which extends your battery life. You go from 2200 milliamp hour to 4400 milliamp hour. And for such a beast, I think that is very, very good. There, that pretty much sums up all the new improvements of this GFX 102. I'm sorry I released this video just now. I just couldn't get my hands on it before, but I think that gives you a pretty good overview as to how good this camera is. And in terms of image quality, once again, I'm sorry I don't have more photos to show you, but I can tell you the depth of field, the bokeh that you get with this 5517 is unreal. It is just unreal. There is that something, that roundness, and the transition is so amazing. I mean, it's a GFX, it's a medium format camera, and that justifies everything else. If you like my content, don't hesitate to hit the subscribe button. That helps me, but it helps you stay up to date with my latest and greatest. And I see you in a few days for a special video. Take care. Cheers.